Great. So, folks, if any of you would like to ask any questions during this webinar, we do have a Q&A session. There's a raise hand button as well on the bottom, and a Q&A button. So feel free to type in your questions. We will make some time towards the end of the call for Q&As as well. So if you want to hang tight till then, that's totally cool as well. And there's a chat box beneath as well. So if you want to add some comments or share anecdotes or use that for questions as well, feel free to do so. So hopefully we'll have a really good session. So we'll let Tony talk more about his stuff, but I do want to just kind of thank everybody for joining us today, and just a couple quick slides about Crowdfunder before we dive into the real content that everybody's here for today. So Tony, if you could take us into the next slide, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so if any of you are not familiar with Crowdfunder, we are a creator-friendly crowdfunding platform that is free to use. So yeah, it is totally free. We do have 3 pricing tiers, one of which is called Simply Free, and we don't charge anything on our end for you to basically use it. So you can go ahead, sign up. It's got all the features and functionalities and all of our pricing plans, and we don't lock anything up even on the free plan, so you get the full set of bells and whistles. And as a company, we've focused on people and the planet first. We're basically a B Corp at this point. We're just kind of finishing that up right now, so we are we do kind of align our values with those particular ones as well. And we just want to make sure that we're doing our part in the world and, doing it right. So that's another thing about us. And then, one of the really good things about us is that we let you just get started right away. We don't have a typical process that you have to kind of wait for when you start a campaign to see if you get going. Of course, we do some vetting to help prevent fraud, but if anybody really wants to start a campaign for their creative art project or the creative projects in general, go ahead, sign up, get going, launch. We try not to be a barrier in that process. And then the other thing I'd really like to mention is that we don't have like a minimum or maximum requirement for how much you can raise. So we've seen people raise, as low as $100 for a sticker project to people raising to like tens of twenties, thousands of dollars for much bigger projects. I think we've seen some like 50 or 100K projects as well in Crowdfunder. So we're able to scale up, or we're able to accommodate for the super small projects as well. So we encourage you, if you have a project you want to try, no matter how big or how small, and you want to get going with it, check it out. Go to crowdfunder.com, click on Get Started Free on the top right, and just go ahead and get a feel for it, and it might be the right platform for you. Next slide, please, Tony. The other thing that's really quickly worth mentioning is that we do have a community, which is what we call our Creator Hub. So feel free to go, the URL is right there, crowdfunder.com/Creator Hub. It's a community where we're sharing our resources, our knowledge, our content that we've created for everybody. We've got Discord in there as well. So if you want to go check out the conversations that are happening there and talk to other like-minded folks, great place to go. We do have our support teams there as well, monitoring conversations. So if you've got a question on our platform or want to just ask about crowdfunding or talk about features and functionalities about our platform, we're there as well. So it might be a good way to reach out to our team if you wanted to have a chat with us. So be sure to check it out. We do put exclusive webinars in there and all the recordings as well. We do put up stuff about networking events. If we're hosting virtual happy hours for creators or on specific spotlight events we're doing, you'll find that there. And then, of course, forums and different toolkits, things like how to write a successful campaign story or some brand assets, if that's something you might be looking for. You can find all of those things in our Creator Hub. So check it out. Tons of resources there, free to sign up. We don't require any subscription costs or anything. We just want to help you out, make sure that you reach your goals for your projects. And if we can give you something along the way to help you get there, then that's what we want to do. All right, I think, Tony, that takes us into the next one, which is, I believe, yours. So, Tony.
Hey, it's me.
Yeah, I'm going to go on mute, but looking forward to everything you have to share.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, my name is Tony Vasinda. I have a couple of different roles that I'm going to talk about, but the thing to know about me is that I have a good history with crowdfunding, both fulfilling projects myself, as well as creating tabletop role-playing games. So today we're going to talk specifically, I think it's like how to ace your tabletop role-playing game fulfillment. I'm going to talk a lot about the ways that I've messed up, the things I've learned along the way, and how you can do things better along with some other capacities. Two of my jobs right now are on the screen. I am the head of brand services at a company called Brand Fox, which is a third-party logistics company. What's a third-party logistics company? It's a company that helps ship products around the world, help people manage e-commerce, business to business. We are a shipping company. That is what we do. And I work specifically with our full service clients. So clients who we work hand in hand with to manage every single aspect of their e-commerce process. So we help them build their site, manage their emails, get their orders out the door, and help them get everything they need to around the world to grow. These are typically smaller companies who need that additional help and support. And I was actually a client at Brand Fox for 3 years. Also, Damon has, let us know where they're watching from. If you're watching live right now, I'd love to see in the chat who's watching, where you're from. If you're a friend, say hi. If you're a new friend, let me know in the chat also too. If you're watching this later somewhere else, let me know in the chat also. I'd love to know where people are tuning in from. But one of the brands that I brought in when I came at Brand Fox that I was a client for is a brand called Plus One EXP, which is a pretty essential to our conversation today because it is a tabletop role-playing game brand that multi-classes in design, beard, and skincare alchemy in the Bardic College of Content Creation. At Plus One, our hope is to help get games to table and create sustainable pathways to play from publication all the way to the table for small creators. It's a huge part of who we are and what we do. And so today's workshop is really a marrying of a lot of the things I love doing at both of my jobs and part of how they fit together. So I'm super excited to be able to talk to you all today about my experiences fulfilling on my own, why I ended up merging in with a 3PL for shipping, and then eventually why I came on staff and how it helps us support RPG creators better, as well as people who are doing other types of projects and different types of creators. So even if you're watching and you're not somebody who creates RPGs, maybe you make comics or do something else, I hope you can extract a lot from here, even though a lot of it will be specifically kind of oriented around fulfillment for that specific kind of category. But we really in both at both companies, which are like, we're a subsidiary of Brand Fox. So our part of our company values are, we really want to be in a relationship with people. It's one of the things we've loved about Crowdfunder from the start. When Leon and David reached out about Tabletop Nonstop, working with Zine Month, the conversations we've been able to grow with them, and even the creator hub that they were talking about earlier. We love the way that it's really investing in the community and a part of the conversation. During Zine Month, David was incredibly active within the Zine Month Discord, and it's been really great to just build and grow those relationships and see how the values that we have match up with what Crowdfunder is trying to do in its relationship with creators. And it really reminds me of the early days of crowdfunding and really investing in the dreams people have. So there's a little bit about who we are and why I'm excited to be here today, both talking specifically about some of the crowdfunder resources, but what you're going to hear from me is going to be applicable regardless of the platform you're using a lot of the time. Crowdfunder has some really great tools that help make it a little bit easier in the process also too, that we can touch on as well. The team may have to help me out on some of the finer points, but that's one of the great things about them being here. It's a little bit about who I am and what I've been up to. I've been the part of either creating or fulfilling or marketing about 24 different crowdfunding projects at this point in time, 4 of them my own in different capacities, but worked on the fulfillment team for about a dozen more, in the marketing team for a lot more beyond that. So if you have any questions about how to get the word out about your game or shipping, we're going to talk through shipping today, but I'd love to follow up with you after the call also too. So kind of setting proper expectations is where I want to start. And a lot of this has to do with, what do you want out of your crowdfunding experience and out of creating the game or the project that you are working on? I really invite people to stop before they even launch their campaign and think really intentionally about what kind of creator you are and what you really want out of funding. There are kind of 4 categories that I tend to put this in. And one is, hey, I'm somebody who really just wants to be able to hold the game that I wrote in my hands, and I want to be able to give it to some of my family and friends and show them the thing that I made, right? You are somebody who really wants to live at that. I just want to take this thing and be able to hold it, and for a lot of people who are in that space, I would actually even say, like, do you want to crowdfund, right? Crowdfunding takes energy, it takes effort. It's a lot of output emotionally, even for a couple of weeks, just the highs and the lows of any campaign, even if you're going to be able to keep the funds no matter what funding goal you hit and move forward towards your project. There's a lot that goes on emotionally and internally during that time. Would it be easier just to pay a higher amount to just print out your game so you can hold it at your hands at that level? That may be the case. A lot of times the people I'm really talking to fall in the middle two categories. That would be hobbyists, people who are like, I want to put this game out. I want to get it to tables. I want to see people playing my game. And I want to be able to put out a few hundred copies of my game. That's where crowdfunding and fulfillment questions really start to become more of a reality. And it's good to know whether you are somebody who's just looking for that family friends experience, somebody who is looking for that hobby level, like, hey, we want to get it out there, or somebody who's maybe even thinking about this as a career path. Hey, I want to be a professional. I want to create sustainability for the way that I do this, something that can maybe put food on my table, help me pay my bills, and work towards a professional pathway in tabletop games and tabletop role-playing games. It's a different category. There's also the fourth category, which is not a lot of the people I work with who are just like interested in unbridled wealth beyond their imaginable dreams. And if you're interested in that, that's great. And I wish you luck on that. I'm probably not super interested in helping you with your project. I might ship it for you if you need somebody to ship it. But I really typically tend to work with people in that hobbyist or professional space primarily. It's the vast majority of creators, and it's people whose values tend to more closely align with mine. I think none of us would be upset about unbridled wealth, but it's not usually the path you set down when you're sitting down to think about, hey, I'm going to create tabletop role-playing games. But you do want to identify, as you're listening, like, who are you in that set? Family, friends, hobbyist, professional, or I'm looking for unbridled wealth. And because that's going to change a lot about what platform you choose to do crowdfunding on, how you pursue marketing, what you invest in that, the stakes of your project, whether it's best to start working at fulfillment or just thinking about fulfilling yourself. There's a whole host of things that come into that conversation, and knowing what you expect and want out of it is a huge question that more people need to pause and ask themselves, because once you crowdfund once, the likelihood that you're going to come back and crowdfund again is really high. And it increases if you have not asked yourself that question. And it's fine if you come back and use Crowdfunder over and over again. It's a great platform. I actually think it creates great pathways for giving you the tools you need to interact with your audience, which a lot of other crowdfunding platforms don't do, which creates better sustainability regardless of which path you want to take. But there's other platforms that don't provide you with those tools. So again, knowing what you're looking for, knowing where you're at, knowing the types of resources you're trying to access are all huge. And so that's one of the places that I'll always start with people is, what do you want out of getting your game published? What do you want out of your crowdfunding experience? Because that's going to dictate a ton of other things. If you want to know more about that, go watch videos over on our YouTube channel, especially the one where I sit down with Jay Dragon and Jarrett Crater and start talk about setting up a crowdfunding project. But for this purposes, I just wanted to touch on it briefly so that you can think about it. If you're watching right now in the chat, I'd love to have you type in like which one of those levels you're at: family, friend, hobbyist, professional, or unbridled wealth. Just let us know so we can know a little bit more about who we're talking to. Also, if you see me looking up here, it's because where my normal camera is here. This is my backup emergency camera. So if it seems like I'm looking up over you a little bit, that's why, because I'm used to looking at a different camera. So some of the things we need to talk about are kind of, what do we need to know? What are some of the essentials that we need to think about when we're going to think about shipping specifically? And you want to think about this before your campaign. Specifically for today's conversation, I'm going to use zines as an example a lot. If you don't know what a zine is, this is a zine, right? So it is a small, typically staple bound book, though sometimes perfect bound. It's usually less than 60 pages, oftentimes in 30 to 40 page range. It could be black and white, can be professionally developed at home. But this is a lot of what people who we've seen do RPG projects on Crowdfunder are doing. You have thicker books that you might see like Aaron, up to like A4, fully produced, very big books that you can see people funding on the project. But those are all different things. And even though they're all books, they all have different weights and dimensions, which are the two things that you actually really want to know before you start looking at what your shipping costs. If you reach out to somebody to get a shipping quote, or start looking at what shipping is going to cost you once your campaign is live, you're going to need to know what your weights and dimensions are. Lots of times the word dimension will be shortened to just the word dims. So your weights and dims is what we're always going to want to know so that we can give you a good estimate. You might be thinking, well, I don't have a copy of my book yet. I haven't been able to print it. That's why I'm doing crowdfunding so that I can figure those things out. That's fine. What you really need to know is your dimensions are usually pretty easy, because if you're talking about a zine specifically, this dimension, the height of the book off the table, isn't one we're super worried about. It's mostly these two. Everything else is less than 3/4 of an inch is really what you need to know, right? But you're going to be 5.5 by 8.5, or if you're a different size paper, it's going to be a slightly different dimensions. And you say less than an inch to the person, right? It's going to be less than an inch. And then you're going to take a game you already have that's a similar size with similar type of paper that you want to use, and you're going to get a kitchen scale out, and you're going to weigh that game, and that's going to give you your weight also too. I know this sounds very low level, very simple, but it's the first thing you need to know to be able to calculate shipping. A lot of people will just hop online, and say, how much does a book of this many pages weigh? Well, the type of paper that you use, the type of stock, the type of binding, all those things change that and fluctuate it. And when you're talking about something that is less than a pound, an ounce, every ounce you hit changes the cost just a little bit. Right now, on average, you will see costs float anywhere from about $2.26 if you're using media mail, up through, you could be looking at, for anything under a pound, $6, $7, $8, $9, $10 for just US shipping. And that's going to be US dollars. And I'm talking in most of the time, so translate locally. Lots of times there are cheaper options. Lots of times there are more affordable options. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But again, knowing your weights, knowing your dimensions lets you get a quote from either a shipping partner who will usually give you one, or it'll let you look online, type things in at USPS or FedEx or UPS, and start pulling down rates so that you know how much to charge for shipping. It's the number one thing that people don't think about. They're like, we're just going to figure it all out afterwards. And if you're charging for shipping later, that's fine. If you're charging for shipping in campaign, you need a good sense of that. If you have a shipping partner, the other things that you need to know, and we'll touch on this a little bit more, is what their order cost is and what other costs they might have. When we talk about shipping partners, we're going to dive into order cost and additional costs a little bit more, but those numbers kind of combined are going to give you what you need to know so you can charge the right number for shipping. It is incredibly tempting to not charge for shipping and just say, it'll be cheap, it'll be free. I don't need to charge for shipping, because places like Amazon have made it seem really easy to offer free shipping. But Amazon is a very large corporation that is also charging you money every single year so that they can give you free shipping. And they are usually charging whoever is selling you that product a pretty significant portion of the fee when they sell it that they're using to offset that cost. That money is coming from somewhere else. Even if you're shipping 100 copies of a game, that could be $500, $600, $700, $800, $1,000 worth of shipping easily, depending on where in the world you are shipping things to. The last thing that you need to consider is exactly that. Do you want to ship anywhere besides the US, or just stick with, do you want to ship anything anywhere besides your own country? Because we have people from all over, including our friends up in Canada. I know Damon doesn't want me to forget that he's up there in beautiful Victoria. So are you just going to shipping in your country, or are you shipping internationally also? Because then you're going to need to know things like VAT fees, other stuff like that, that matter a whole lot. So there's some of the things you need to think about as you're starting. Get all those things written down, write them down on your campaign. Let people know what the options are about how much shipping is going to be when they check out, and let them know if you are only shipping to certain regions. And again, where they can get your book after the campaign if you're not shipping to that region physically during the campaign also too. So those are some of the essentials that you'll want to know for shipping specifically. The next thing we really want to dive into when you're looking at your campaign, we talked about this a little bit with your core project, but what's in the box? And I want to talk about this from a couple different standpoints. Like I mentioned, these are all different. These are two very different sized and weight games. These would each change those shipping factors a lot. This one's over a pound. This one's sub half a pound. The cost difference shipping these two, 2 is going to be significant just from a carrier cost, even though they're both great games. The cost difference shipping these two is going to be significant just from a carrier cost, even though they're both great games. Even though they're both great games, the cost difference shipping these two is going to be significant just from a carrier cost, even though they're both great games. they're going to cost very different amounts to put in the mail. But the other thing is, are you putting in patches? Are you putting in stickers? Are you putting in posters? Do you have a cassette tape or a vinyl that you're trying to ship? All of those things are going to change it. The number of items in your package are going to increase your weight. They're going to change your dimensions. And if you're using a shipping partner, they're going to change what they charge you a lot of the time for something called a pick fee. Dive into that again a little bit more later. The number one item I really want to caution you about, though, a lot of people will say, hey, I really want to put a poster for my game in there. I want to take some of this great art that I have had made, and I want to make it, 11 by 17, 2 feet by 3 feet, and I want to ship it as a poster. And I think that can be a great add-on to a product. Just realize, if you're shipping a poster, the number one thing you want to be comfortable doing with that poster is folding it up so that it is about the same size as whatever the largest thing in your book is. If you're thinking, hey, I want to roll that poster up and put it in a tube and ship it, that means without anything else, you have added a second shipment, a second package that you have to ship. You are going to immediately double all of your shipping costs with that. But if you can fold it up and stick it on top of the book and stick it in the same package, you're going to add almost no, if any, cost to each of your packages. So posters are the number one thing I like to warn people is like, hey, think about how you want it to ship in the end. But if you're not doing an RPG, or if you're doing an RPG that's a deck of cards like Spindle Wheel that we just helped fulfill, that's going to have a different boxification process. It's going to sit in something different. It's going to sit in probably a 5 by 5 by 5 inch box. That costs a different amount to ship. The weights are very different on that. You're going to be between 1 pound and 2 pounds. All those things are going to change it. So you want to think about each element and the physical factor of your book really intentionally. You want to think about your stretch goals and add-ons, because things like stickers and patches can't be sent via media mail a lot of the time. Media mail is reserved specifically for DVDs, magazines, books, and other form of media that serve an educational purpose. And there's a lot of things that are disqualified from that. And if you're planning on media mail for your rates, and then all of a sudden you do an add-on where you do a stretch goal that has you put something in it that is, doesn't match those qualifications, you just run the risk of having packages returned, packages disqualified from that, and a lot of other things. Potentially even sometimes if you are using a shipping service, you'll get locked out of media mail rates if USPS decides they want to do that. Most people aren't going to hit that level of notification for that, but it can happen. And I do have people who have been told, no, we can't ship media mail for you anymore because you're not following the rules of media mail. So again, it shifts things around a lot when you start thinking about your add-ons and your pledge levels, right? And every pledge level, really, you got to think about as its own separate shipping thing. It's going to cost $5 to send this one. It's going to cost $10 to send this one. It's going to cost $20 to send this one. You need to know those for each of the different pledge levels. Even if people are mixing and matching and doing add-ons and other things like that to create custom levels, the vast majority of people are going to pick one of your pre-selected levels. And knowing what the shipping is for that makes things a lot easier at checkout for Crowdfunder or in a pledge manager for other crowdfunding options. So you want to build your rewards with shipping in mind. I also like that my friend who built this slide for me went ahead and put my instructions in here. Probably right after what I need to know was where to put this one, because I realized I needed to put it in after the fact. But you want to build those rewards thinking about shipping, thinking about what it's going to do to your shipping, and thinking about how it impacts that. And again, specifically, if you're thinking about putting a poster in, really consider, do I want to put a poster in? Also, if you have questions, go ahead and toss them in either now, or if you're watching this later, into the chat down below. I'm sure they can flag me out. And we'll get an answer for you also. So the next thing is looking for the right ship, right? So looking for the right partnership or relationship for your project. Here are some general rules of thumb that I tend to operate by for shipping. If you're shipping less than 100 of something, it's almost always worth it just to ship it yourself, unless there's a reason to use your partner. There's a really beautiful thing about seeing the names of the people who backed it, being able to fill out the envelopes, pack them with care, put in little notes, especially if it's your first time campaign and you're under 100, you really probably just want to ship it yourself. Getting Stamps account, getting on, Easy Ship or Pirate Ship, setting up a quick account, being able to run out labels yourself on your home printer, and just getting it taken care of is It can be a lot. It might take you a week to do it. If you can sit down and do it in less than a day or an afternoon if you know exactly what you're doing. But it's a really kind of meditative process and can be a really great way to connect with backers that working with a shipping partner isn't going to get you. If you are between 100 to 200 backers on a project, that's really when you could start thinking about, hey, does it make sense to work with a fulfillment partner, or should I invest a little bit more in equipment that I can make things a little bit easier for me? A couple of things that I always just like to show people that are just things that I use on a regular basis when I ship from home or that we use at the warehouse for Brand Fox. This is my preferred shipping container for zines, right? Or for small books. Either of the two books that I've shown numerous times will fit in this. It's what's called a lay flat because it lays flat. It's got some rigidity to it, which is going to prevent bending. The cardboard makes it a little bit more resistant to whatever, the carrier might decide to do to it. And you can fit 2 or 3 zines or one thick book in this. They are self-adhesive, so you just pull this off the shed, and they're slightly water resistant because of the finish. It's a really great, affordable. You can get these typically online if you look around for about 25 to 35 cents anywhere that you look for. And they come in a bunch of different sizes, but 6x9 or 7x10 is the most useful one. Especially if you're shipping yourself, this is what I would look at for small TTRPGs. They even make bigger A4 size ones if you're going for a full size book. Also too. So this is my preferred shipping thing. They're called, if you search white lay flat envelopes, these will pop up from a number of different companies. You can look around for the different cost on each one. At that $200 backer level, again, that's when you can start trying to think about, okay, am I investing money in this or am I working with a shipping partner? Again, if you're doing it yourself, the other piece of equipment I really recommend all the time is this. This is a label printer. It's going to print out 4x6 inch labels. I'll show you one of those in just one second. This is a Rollo brand one. I don't have a deal with Rollo. This is literally just my favorite printer as far as speed, consistency, and quality of print goes. These run out labels really fast. I can print a few hundred an hour. And I've loved using this and had shipped out of my home for 8 years for a home business. And this got a lot of use out of it. I had one before this that got dropped in shipping, so I had to replace it with this one, but it worked great. For 4 years. I've had this one for about 3 years, no problems. Dymo, which is another popular brand, is fine, but I went through my first Dymo in about 10 months and had to buy my second one 3 months later. So I much prefer Rollo as a brand. Don't have an affiliate deal with them. They don't pay me for saying that. It's just the brand I want. And then the thing, if you are, hold on. There we go. Did my audio change? We're back to my right audio. All right, I think we're back to the right one. The other thing is labels that you'll need to be able to slap on the outside. But those 3 items will get you through shipping at home if you want to, along with some sort of online account to be able to help process and put your orders into. You can just hand address things also too, and then go to your local postal office and buy postage also too. That's an option. They're going to give you weird looks. They're going to be upset with you. They're going to want you to use a machine in the corner on your own. You can just look at them and say, no, I'd like you to do it, please. And they will, because that's their job. Or you can go over and use the machine in the corner also too. That's fine. Whichever makes the most sense. So if you're over that 200 limit, or you're getting near that 200 limit, that's when you really want to start looking at potentially using a shipping partner. You want to look at, when you're doing that, what are you looking for in a shipping partner? Like, what are the things you want? This is the equipment. I should have clicked my slides forward. So what are you going to look for in a shipping partner? You want somebody ideally who's going to match your budget, right? This is somebody ideally you want to reach out before you launch your project to get quotes, to get those numbers. Even if you're not sure, even if you're like, I don't know how successful this is going to be, can I get a quote? Most places are willing to give you a quote. Some aren't. That's fine. You can look around online and get a general sense of things. What you want to ask is, do they have any shipping partners that give them better deals or rates on shipping? Some of them do, some of them don't. And then you want to ask them about their pick and pack fees or their order fees, is the other thing you want to ask for. And then how much boxes cost. Again, those are the things you need to know what your total shipping cost per order is going to be. Most shipping partners are going to give you all of those things in one go, right? So they're going to say, hey, here's about what it's going to cost you. They're also always going to caveat that with, We have surcharges at different times of year. Shipping is volatile. That's subject to change. Depends on when you fulfill, because if I tell you the numbers today and you don't ship for 18 months, it may not be the same numbers at that point in time. So you want to look for a partner who you feel like you have good communication and rapport with, who probably understands the niche that you're shipping out of. So RPGs or comics or other things like that. People who know what it's like to ship that thing. There's tons of big companies, typically with the word ship in their name. They will ship your stuff for you, but the reality is they're not typically going to be concerned about you as a creator and your product. They're going to do exactly what they do for everyone else, because in shipping, the margins are super thin. And so the things you can do on repeat are really important. You ideally want to find somebody who is either games focused or who has really strong customer relationship and customer service reviews, so that you know it's somebody that you can work with well. Look at what your values are as a creator. Ask what their values are as a company. It's a big part of who we are at BrandFox, is making sure we're the best fit for people. Even if we aren't the best fit, if we can refer them to somebody else, we're really happy to help people find the best fit for them. There are tons of other great fulfillment partners out there who work specifically in games. We are a general 3PL. We work with a lot of consumer packaged goods, a lot of nonprofits, a lot of sports and outdoor equipment, but we do have a lot of RPG clients in addition to Plus One, Possum Creek Games. We have Space Penguin Inc. We have, this is the secret, I'll give you all a drop. We have I don't know if I'm supposed to tell you, but we do have a very cool brand that makes a Swedish death metal RPG that we're about to launch a store for. I won't tell you who they are, though. That we help manage a lot of different RPG brands, so we know what it takes to ship RPG books. And we have staff members like me who actively play and care about tabletop role-playing games. So you always want to kind of find and identify what the niche is, and that's a mix of price point, culture, and what you need as a creator from people to be able to start asking those questions. So I think we're a great fit, but if you come to me and it turns out like, hey, we're not, because there's something about your game that makes us not a good fit, I have a list of folks I can recommend you to based on that. And that's really what we want. We want you to find your best partner. So kind of identify some of those things. And the other thing you might just want to ask yourself is, man, something I really just need is that person to be close to me. When I was a client, one of the reasons I went with BrandFox originally was I live in Philadelphia and it's based out of Middletown, PA, which meant I could take an hour to drive out anytime I wanted to drop off stuff, check in, talk to the staff, visit my goods in the warehouse, and make sure things were running smoothly. Sometimes location is the number one thing you're looking for. And the other big thing you're looking for with that is not just location to you, but what is it like for them to ship internationally? It's the number one challenge right now for a lot of fulfillment for crowdfunding projects. Is you may want to ship internationally, but that can be overwhelming, especially if you're shipping at home. If you're shipping at home yourself, I highly recommend only do US or US and North America, or US, North America, and Great Britain, because those are easy and relatively cheap-ish to ship to. But if you're creating a small zine or $20 game, you can expect to pay about $20 to ship that game to any of those other three locations. The thing you really want to start doing is looking at partners who might have, if you want to go international, access to different resources, like one of the ones that we do called Passport, that makes the cost for international transit significantly cheaper and shorter by tapping into some different supply chain lines that those partners have built. We also have the ability to help you take care of something called the VAT or value added taxes that a lot of different EU countries now have, and a lot of different tariff fees that come up when you're shipping globally. You have to manage those if you are shipping yourself. If you're shipping with a partner and they have access to tools like Passport, they're able to either include those value-added fees up front, or help you navigate the process of making sure those things are properly tracked when the shipments go out. So it's another great reason to look at a fulfillment partner. If you're looking at shipping internationally, it's something you really want to consider and think about. And that helps expand your audience significantly if you're going that international route. So just ask yourself those questions. It's also fine to say, for crowdfunding, we're only doing shipping in the US, and then we're going to have a place you can buy physical copies later if you're international as well. So that's another thing to look for in partners, what kind of international support they can offer. And that might even be multiple locations, different partnerships, a lot of different things. I want to pause real quick before we talk about this next one, because it's getting into the actual physical reality of shipping and some of the processes for that. If you have any questions, feel free, drop them in the chat. If there's anything we've said that kind of jumps out at you, let me know. Would love to dive into any of those. But I just want to make sure, like, if you're tracking, if you have any questions, now's a great time to ask. But otherwise, we're going to dive into the logistics of getting things actually shipped out, and then talk about what you do after the initial fulfillment is done to kind of keep things moving forward with your game. Because sometimes it's like, hey, especially if you're in that hobbyist space or that friends and family space, I shipped it, I'm done, right? That might be it. But if you've got 100 or 200 or 300 or thousands of copies left over, what do you do with those other copies? Is something we're going to talk about also too. So I don't see any questions immediately popping in. So once the books are printed, you're going to work with either doing them yourself, working with a service like Mixum, which does a lot of printing all over the world for a lot of RPG folks, or a full printing service like Bang or Taylor, or somewhere overseas that you've had shipped to you. Once the books are printed, if you're shipping them yourself, you've got to get them to you. There's going to be shipping costs that come with that. Make sure you built that into your campaign up front. How are they getting from the warehouse to you? So you want to look at your total landed cost for that to get them where they need to go. But if you're working with a shipping partner, or even if you're working yourself, the first thing that's going to do is all of them are going to come in. You're going to want to open them. You're going to want to check them. You're going to want to make sure that they are correct, that they are not damaged, and you're going to want to count them. And I know that seems silly, but you want to make sure the company sent you the right amount of books that you paid for. Sometimes there's a positive variance, like, hey, we printed an extra 10 copies in case something got damaged in shipping. And it's good to know that you've got those extra 10 copies. A shipping partner will typically do that for you. And this is why it's good to work with somebody who tells you their total cost up front, because counting the books in is something that a lot of people will not tell you, hey, we're going to charge you money for. Like, we have a project setup fee that covers all of those kind of small ancillary costs, so that people know, hey, for each of your SKUs, when we count them in, here's how much it's going to cost, and we're going to charge you that amount up front to make it easy, rather than you being surprised by that bill at the end. But you'll see in lots of people's shipping partners, like, oh, we're going to charge you $30 or $40 for miscellaneous tasks, but they don't define what that is. And then you get billed for a lot of miscellaneous tasks at the end. But somebody has to count them in. Somebody has to weigh them and measure them, even though you already knew your dims and weights. They have to confirm that. They have to take a picture of it, so there's a physical thing in their warehouse management system. You have to do all the things that get it set up for you. If you're receiving it at home, you want to do the exact same thing. You want to take one of those copies, count it in, weigh it. You already know the dimensions because of the paper size, but make sure the weight is accurate to what you thought it was, so that you can set it up right in your shipping software. Once you have that done, you just want to organize for shipping. For me, it was always, I'm going to print out every single one of the packing slips, and I'm going to assemble orders, usually in a box where I'm like, hey, here's all the orders. And then I'm just going to start pulling those different items off the shelf, and getting them set and ready to go into an envelope. I'm going to get all the orders, or a couple hundred orders at a time, set up and ready to pack, so that I can go really fast when I get into that packing mode. That's the same thing that you're going to talk about with a partner. Their pick pack fee, that thing I've said a number of times, is literally them going through the warehouse and picking the things off the ship and getting them off the shelves and getting them ready to pack. They have labor that has a cost for, and that's why they charge you an order fee, or a pick pack fee is lots of times what they're going to call it, is to pay for the labor of that individual to cover them walking around the warehouse, and then being able to hopefully pay a just salary, like we do, right? So for people who care about their employees, who pay well, those pick pack fees may be a little bit higher, or they may take some of those ancillary costs and drop them into the pick pack fee, so they don't have to charge it to you somewhere else. Usually, if somebody's charging you $4 or $5 an order, which is a very high number, they're not going to charge you additional fees, because they're basically moving all of that over to that kind of order fee structure. So those are some of the things you kind of want to understand about the total process. But once those items are pulled, they're literally going to put them in the packaging, label them, and ship them out the door. So it looks similar one way or the other. The nice thing for a warehouse is they can do, or 3PL, they can do hundreds or thousands of orders a day, versus if you're doing it at home, you're going to be limited to doing it in your free time, taking off a Saturday, having a bunch of friends come over, and packing them all out to get them out into the world. But the process looks pretty similar to what you would think about for it. But you want to be very intentional about how you're doing the process, checking to make sure the orders are right. A lot of things that take a lot of detail and a lot of focus. So if you don't have high executive function or you're not a detail-oriented person, shipping is challenging. I have a great spouse who always helped me with shipping. They got paid a salary to do it for a long time from our home business because they were far more detail oriented than I am. I've gotten much better at the shipping process as an individual, but there's a lot of challenges that come with that. Between that process, you also do have to figure out how to get your orders into whatever shipping process you want to. Pledge managers, the export process, all those different things can be really challenging. One of the things I love about Crowdfunder is its API makes things really easy to integrate with other things if you know how to do the coding side of things. Even if you don't, the export process for Crowdfunder for your orders is actually really, really simple and easy to use, but you're going to need to upload that somewhere to get all the shipping data, to get all the orders, to be able to print out all the labels and do all those other pieces. So again, these are some things that we want to think about, we want to consider as we're kind of going through is how that process is moving forward on a software basis also. The last thing I want to talk about, this is again the one that I think a lot of people don't think about. People are going to go out, people are going to be excited, they're going to get their books, they're going to start posting things on Twitter. It's probably, other than funding, typically the best moment in any campaign is seeing people actually get their books. Sometimes it's better than the funding moment, depending on how attached you are to some of those different things. But a lot of people don't think about things beyond that point. Again, what are we going to do with these extra copies that we have? And so there's a lot of things you should think about, and there's a sales pitch at the end, right? But before we even talk about what we do and some of the ways that we help support people after just the initial crowdfunding, it's not just about what we do, right? There's other great partners at Crowdfunder like IPR. There's great online retailers like Plus One, like Exalted Funeral, who will oftentimes pick up copies of your book to put in their store and to help market it. So this is oftentimes what we call managing the tail of your project, the extra copies that you have that can go into retail. How do you get things into brick and mortar stores? Those are things you want to think about during your campaign, but you also want to, after things are done, say, hey, IPR, can I send you, 100 copies of my game? Hey, Exalted Funeral, would you want to buy 50 copies of my game? Hey, Plus One, are you interested in putting some things in the store? You want to think about who you're going to reach out to after the fact to help manage those extra copies. And that's a little bit about what I want to talk about right now. We have two models that we see people tend to want to come in and work with us on. The full service model, which is the part of BrandFox that I work, the clients that I work with, these are usually slightly more established brands. They're people who have a few different products out, and this may be just a new one, but we basically help them build an entire professional website. We host it, we help manage it, we handle all their customer service, we help with emails, marketing, cover their pick, pack fees, help with conferences and events. So we'll help go out to live events and help them run their booths and other stuff like that, and help work hand in hand with them to support their growing brand. And we do it for a flat percentage of cost. We have a similar project process through Plus One. If you're a first-time creator looking for a place to put your first game and don't want to have to build out a store or manage shipping yourself from home, we can actually take any additional product that you send us on top of the crowdfunding fulfillment. We can put it on Plus One. We'll build a custom collection for you if you have multiple items. We handle your customer service. We'll help market to brick and mortar stores, cover all your pick, pack fees, and sell at conferences and events, and help support your growing brand for a different breakdown of the 25% of all sales, which is essentially kind of a consignment model. But it is an important part of shipping. It is something that not enough people think about in advance. They're like, I'll just ship them myself, but you have to set up a store, you have to host a store, you have to roast a store, you have to remember to check things on a regular basis, you have to remember to be able to go to the post office on a regular basis, or you're going to start getting ugly emails that will emotionally demolish you because you feel like you let people down. If you think backer emails are bad or backer messages are bad, I bought this from you and it's taken more than 3 days to ship out emails you stole from me, are even worse. And so you want to think about what you're going to do afterwards. And again, that comes both down to where am I putting this? Like, who am I helping get extra copies to? How is it going to get the word out more about my game? And then thinking about, do I want to do e-commerce either through a shipping partner, a third-party logistics company like BrandFox, or through Plus One? We're happy to work with people to get their games out into the world also too. So that's, again, the last thing that I want people to think about is don't stop at the fulfillment for the crowdfunding project. Think about how you're creating sustainability beyond that through ongoing e-commerce, whether that's working with a number of partners like IPR, whether that's working with a third-party logistic company like BrandFox to sell your own goods. So there's some big picture things. It's a lot of information all at once, but I just want to make sure we have a little bit of time afterwards for Q&A also too. Good. I did about 45 minutes. That's what I expected.
That's great. Thank you. Well-deserved sip of beverage there. So just a reminder to everybody who is attending the webinar, you can drop your questions in the chat box. We have a Q&A section. If you prefer to ask your questions vocally, just do the raise hand thing on Zoom, and I think there's a way I can unmute you as well, so you can ask Tony directly. So all of those options are there. We don't have any questions yet, but I actually have a question and a comment, or rather a comment first, then a question, just to add to what you were saying earlier, Tony, about how obviously, being part of Crowdfunder, I'm going to talk a bit about Crowdfunder, but you mentioned there about the API and the exporting of the orders through our transactions list. One of the other things that's just good to know about Crowdfunder is you can actually in Crowdfunder indicate when the order has been fulfilled, so that if you're continuing to export later, you don't want to, double fulfill an order accidentally. And technically, you can also just, grab the spreadsheet and just filter out all the orders that have been, properly completed and sent out. So it's just a nice little thing. If you just continue, it's really just, it's staying on top of it, right? Like if you're doing all these little things as you fulfill them, makes life a lot easier, down the road, I suppose.
Yeah, so and even Crowdfunder, one of the great things about it is essentially it turns into a pre-sale site immediately once your project's done, right? So like you can theoretically let that run as long as you want, and if you just want to say like, hey, at the end of every month I ship out the new books and I'm gonna download it and run on the next thing, you have a lot of latitude in Crowdfunder to do some of that managing the tail. I don't think you want to live there forever, but you have a lot more options to support you as a creator. Again, it's one of the reasons that like I'm a huge fan of what Crowdfunder does, because I think are constantly giving people these tools to be able to directly communicate with the people who want to support them, which again other platforms don't do, and to be able to manage that post-campaign process and that tail a little bit better than a lot of other folks do.
Yeah. We did have a question come in, and I'll save mine for after this one, but it is an anonymous attendee. So
anonymous? No, that's fine.
No, and that's cool. It's all right. So this individual says they jumped in a little late, but they were wondering, and if you covered this already, apologies. But how do you calculate shipping and handling on printing costs when you have no idea how many backers you'll end up getting, and especially if you don't have a large social following base to kind of get an idea?
Yeah, the reason I typically encourage people to say go ask a 3PL, they have access to more data than you do, and I'll be transparent. 3PLs are going to be a little bit more expensive to work with because they're doing the work, not you, right? It's almost always a little bit cheaper to ship from your own house, right? So if you go to a 3PL and get a quote from them, your cost, especially if you're not going to drag the campaign out, is going to be less than whatever they quote you typically. Internationally, that may not be the case, but for US it is, and internationally is a little bit easier to predict. And again, I would say maybe don't go international your first time out. Just try US shipping or your in-country shipping to start with. It's a little bit harder if you're not in the US. The US tends to make up a pretty big share of RPG and funding markets a lot of the time, just based on the way a lot of things break down. But go ahead and get those quotes, and the number is less important. Like we don't do a lot of volume breaks for people, especially when you're doing crowdfunding fulfillment as a 3PL. Usually there's not a lot of justification to give cost breaks, because the cost breaks you give as a fulfillment company tend to be based around ongoing relationships with clients and them shipping tons of units month over month. And a crowdfunding campaign, even when it's a big campaign, it's still a one-time interaction, and you tend to not be able to kind of be flexible with that. So I would say go ask for a quote from placement bearers. You can reach out to me and I can let you know some of those basic things. But I would basically say, you want, depending on whether you want to calculate your time in or not, I always encourage people to pay themselves 30 to 50 cents a package just for your time, because I think your time is valuable, and that you should, again, be doing things that make it sustainable for you. And if you want to be able to pay yourself an hourly rate or a salary, it's good to say, hey, it's going to be 30 to 50 cents a package for me to just pick, pack, and ship, which is high, but I still think is worth it because it's also gives you a little bit of padding that you can finesse with. 50 cents for packaging and labeling is a good number. Your shipping fees, just look at whatever your local shipping, like your country of origin shipping is. So if it's USPS, you're going to look up, hey, what does it cost half a pound? Especially if you're sending this, you can usually send this what we call at a not a flat rate, but a flats rate, meaning this is a flat package or a letter mail package. As long as it doesn't get more than 3/4 of an inch thick and it's not fully rigid, you can ship this like you would a letter, which is significantly cheaper. But what I typically do is just figure out what the parcel rate is on that, and that's my rate, which is going to be, $4, about, and then that's going to get you to about $5 or $6. Then you're going to put a little bit of padding on that for how things may fluctuate, additional costs and things that come up. So $6 or $7, right? Whereas if I was going to ship this for you, I would charge you probably around $8, right? So there is that kind of swing, but again, it's taking care of the labor cost on that. But it's, again, taking just in some of those basic things into account. So you can usually find out what this is going to cost. It's not going to be a huge shift. And it doesn't really matter if you go to a 3PL, they're almost always going to quote you higher than what it's going to cost you to do yourself. Hopefully that helps.
Cool. And then, again, we have a few more minutes if anybody else wants to ask a question, but I have a question. You mentioned earlier, Tony, that, if you're shipping, let's say 100 or less zines, it's probably best to do it yourself on that with that volume. Obviously, anything higher, you might want to consider a partner. Is there any benefit to a hybrid there where, for example, if I do the shipping and packing if I do the packing myself, is there any advantage to me still working with a partner to the shipping component, or is it at that point you might as well just go to like a FedEx or UPS and
I mean, we would never do it, right? Because essentially we would have to, in order to guarantee that order came through, we would have to know what's in that package. I mean, one, just legally to put it in the mail, we would need to know what's in that package. Two, we can't. Now you can do some bundling and kitting yourself, because lots of times the order fee, like I kept on saying, like pick and pack, and usually like pick is like the there's like one pick is usually included, like the first item, and then they're going to charge you a little bit more for every other item they have to pick up and put in the package, right? They're going to charge you just a little bit more because it takes a little bit longer. It's not a bad idea if you can do some bundling yourself. Hey, we have 4 pamphlets. I'm going to put all 4 pamphlets in a sleeve and then send them over to my 3PL, so that then it's just one pick, because all 4 of those pamphlets always go out together. A lot of the people we work with, we do kitting for, which is there's an additional cost that goes with that. But we always we work with them in advance to say, how do we get your picks down to the right level? Because if somebody only has like 3 orders that have a lot of picks, it's not worth doing kitting. But if you've got 100 orders that are like a higher tier that have all these extra items in it, it's actually usually worth, let's get all of those together. Let's put all of those together. Let's put them in a bundle so that we can just take them off the shelf. It's faster for us, so we charge you less. Those are the type of things I would say, if you're going to take something on yourself, do that yourself. But it's not worth packing it and then taking it somewhere. Yeah, it's going to be better to just take it to FedEx, go to your post office, hop online, print out the labels yourself, than it is to necessarily go and pack it and then have everybody else do it. So kitting and bundling is one thing, but packing, either let the 3PL do it or you do it yourself, one of the two.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Doesn't look like we have any more questions. So I think, and we're getting close to the end of the hour. So good timing. Thank you so much, Tony, for sharing all this information with us. Really helpful, really useful. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for joining in today and participating in this webinar. As Tony mentioned, you can reach out to him. We're going to be putting the recordings out as well, so people can come back and rewatch them, or if you're watching it for the first time as a recording, hopefully you're getting good value out of it as well. So yeah, thanks again, Tony.
Yeah, and if you want to connect, Tony at brandfoxllc.com. So that's Brandfox, like limited liability corporation. .com is my best email. And then if you reach out on social media, it's going to be best to reach out to +1EXP. So at +1EXP. I'm happy to talk early if you need help. If you're in that position, if you don't have a huge social following, you want help with marketing, it's a huge amount of what we do. Help getting the word out about small indie RPGs to our audience. Also, we have people who that's why they follow us, is to find out about cool small projects that they can support. We love supporting crowdfunder, but our Messages are open on pretty much any social media platform at +1EXP also. So you can just reach out, shoot us a message at us, and we'll be happy to respond and talk about your project and how we can help if we can help.
Sounds great. Thanks again, Tony, and thank you all. And enjoy the rest of your day, wherever you're joining us from.